Something is rising from the ocean, and the camera caught it before anyone was ready to see truth. This is not a legend retold by sailors drunk on fear. This is not an old myth recycled for comfort. These are raw, unsettling moments pulled straight from the deep. Figures with human eyes and inhuman bodies, hauled onto decks, drifting beneath divers, staring back through cold water as if they recognize us. Footage meant to be forgotten. Clips that vanished, resurfaced, and now refuse to stay buried. The sea didn't give us monsters, it gave us witnesses. Every frame feels wrong, like reality tearing for half a second, revealing something ancient, watching, waiting. Are these evolutionary survivors? Something that never left when we climbed onto land? Or proof that the ocean has always had its own intelligence, silent and patient? Once you see these images, you can't unsee them. And the most terrifying part isn't what surfaces, it's what chooses not to. Before we expose everything, like, comment, and subscribe to Mystery Footage Uncovered Now. At dawn off the Barents Sea 2019, a trawler's handheld deck camera recorded this while 4 net crewmen watched in stunned quiet. A slick gray torso lifted, caught on camera. Hands shook as the net tightened, filmed inches away. No one believed it. Divers caught staring. The anatomy could be a previously unknown hominin offshoot adapted to abyssal pressure, with increased bone density to counter buoyancy, reduced pigmentation from perpetual darkness, and a muscular caudal structure possibly derived from ancient pinniped or cetacean ancestry. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a deep pressure physiology with slow metabolism and faint bioluminescent glands, gliding heavy as a whale but sharp as a knife-edge shadow, echoing old Leviathan accounts from Nordic logs where sailors described human faces rising from nets before storms. If something this close surfaced once, how many times has it watched decks from below without being seen? In late afternoon on the Grand Banks 2021, a fixed winch camera captured this as a veteran fisherman called others over. A ridged spine surfaced, filmed through spray. The mast twisted once, caught on camera. Scientists shocked by the still frame. The elongated body and dermal ridges could be a deep-sea vertebrate optimized for low-light hunting, with dense cartilage instead of brittle bone, pressure-resistant organs, and possibly derived from an ancient fish lineage that split before modern mammals. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an evolutionary bridge with bioluminescent adaptation along the flanks, silent like a predator drone under ice, recalling Kraken-era illustrations where seamen were sketched hauling nets apart. A myth resurfacing here because this footage shows controlled movement rather than thrashing. If nets can pull one up by accident, what happens when one comes up on purpose? At sunset near the Azores 2022, a phone camera documented this as a deckhand cradled what surfaced alive. Tiny fingers curled, caught on camera. Gills fluttered once, filmed close. No one believed the size. This juvenile form could be an early life stage of a larger abyssal species, with soft bone density before pressure hardening, translucent skin aiding oxygen absorption, and a metabolic rate tuned to cold depths. And if the structure is real, it might suggest mammalian parental strategies, adapted to the deep, glowing faintly like a dying LED, as old Umabozu tales spoke of sea children appearing before ships vanished, possibly because such young cannot survive surface exposure. If this was a child, how vast is the adult waiting below? At midday in the South China Sea 2020, an action camera recorded this while a lone fisherman whispered in disbelief. A tail flicked, filmed steady, eyes tracked light, caught on camera. Sonar detected nothing else. The compact morphology could indicate a pressure-borne organism capable of extreme compression, with flexible bone matrices, reduced lung structures, and skin cells adapted for bioluminescent signaling. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a scalable physiology where growth responds to depth, gliding like a stealth sub in miniature, matching Lusca folklore that described small sea humanoids as omens of larger shapes below. If something this small reached the surface, what massive form did it come from? On a scientific dive off Indonesia 2018, a remotely operated vehicle camera filmed this as an ROV pilot froze. A face emerged, scanned by LEDs. Sediment lifted, caught on camera. Scientists shocked, audio cut. The facial musculature and limb placement could indicate an amphibious predator with reinforced cranial bones, pressure-adapted eyes, and slow twitch muscles for deep ambush. And if the structure is real, it might suggest ancient origins predating human myths, silent like a submarine shadow on sonar, reminiscent of Ningen reports, where pale humanoids were seen resting on the seafloor, perhaps explaining why legends fixate on watching faces. If the deep can look back, how long has it been observing us? During a storm night in the North Atlantic 2017, a deck CCTV system captured this as a captain shouted orders. Teeth flashed, caught on camera. The net strained, filmed shaking. No one believed the screams. The aggressive posture and musculature could be a defensive response from a deep-pressure organism dragged beyond its tolerance, with dense skeletal support, limited surface vision, and possible bioluminescent glands dimming under stress. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a top-tier abyssal hunter, big as a shipping container, but moving like a stealth sub, mirroring Kraken-era sailor logs that warned of net takers rising during storms because pressure shifts force them upward. If storms pull them closer to us, what happens as oceans grow louder and warmer? At night in the Norwegian Sea 2020, a ship's security camera recorded this as a salvage officer stood frozen near the railing. A horned silhouette lay still, caught on camera. Blue deck lights flared, filmed through mist. No one spoke as boots circled it. The body structure could be a deep ocean humanoid adapted to crushing pressure, with reinforced rib cartilage, elongated spinal processes, and a heavy caudal fin suggesting powerful vertical thrust. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient offshoot of marine mammals that developed bioluminescent skin cells and extreme cold tolerance, gliding heavy as a whale but sharp as a knife-edge shadow. Echoing Leviathan-era accounts, where sailors described horned figures dragged aboard during winter storms when pressure gradients spike. If this was only stunned and not dead, what happened after the camera feed cut? At dawn in the North Atlantic, 2019, a crane-mounted work camera captured this as a deck supervisor yelled to stop the winch. A jaw opened wide, caught on camera. Ropes strained, filmed against gray sky. Crew backed away in silence. The elongated torso and exposed rib structures could be consistent with a deep-sea predator evolved for low-buoyancy environments, with dense musculature, pressure-hardened organs, and a cranial shape possibly derived from ancient cartilaginous fish. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an apex hunter pulled from depth too fast, silent like a predator drone under ice, recalling Kraken legends that warned of net haulers screaming skyward when disturbed. If this one came up unwillingly, how many remain below that have never been pulled? At low tide off a remote northern coast, 2018, a handheld DSLR recorded this as a lone photographer adjusted focus in disbelief. A long figure rested still, caught on camera. Hair drifted wet, filmed in wind. The water stayed calm. The posture and limb placement could indicate a semi-amphibious species capable of resting above water briefly, with dense bones for submersion, skin adapted to salt abrasion, and musculature optimized for slow, efficient movement. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a lineage older than surface mammals, gliding silent like a stealth sub at periscope depth, paralleling Ningen sightings where pale humanoids were reported sitting motionless near ice or rock. If it wasn't stranded, was it waiting? At midday in northern Australia 2021, a phone camera documented this as local fishermen pulled together on a muddy bank. A scaled tail thrashed, caught on camera, arms strained, filmed chest high. No one laughed. The freshwater tolerance and powerful tail could suggest a migratory deep-sea organism capable of entering rivers with adaptive kidneys, reinforced vertebrae, and skin resistant to parasites. And if the structure is real, it might indicate an ancient coastal species remembered in indigenous river spirits, moving heavy as a shipping container, but controlled as a machine. If rivers are no barrier, how far inland can the deep reach? In clear water over a coral shelf, 2017, a diver's helmet cam filmed this as air bubbles stuttered upward. A pale form slid past, caught on camera. Spines rippled, filmed close. The diver froze mid-kick. The streamlined shape and dorsal spines could indicate a pressure-borne swimmer optimized for silent reef navigation, with flexible bones, enhanced night vision, and faint bioluminescent markings for communication. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an evolutionary cousin to abyssal fish that retained humanoid traits, gliding like a knife-edge shadow, similar to umabozu myths of reef guardians seen before disappearances. If divers see them briefly, how often do they pass unseen? At sunset on a rocky coast, 2022, a stabilized phone camera recorded this as waves receded and a witness whispered. A head turned slowly, caught on camera. The tail shifted, filmed steady. The sea stayed quiet. The upright posture and gaze could imply advanced awareness, with skeletal strength for partial land support, lungs adapted for short surface exposure, and sensory organs tuned to vibration rather than sound. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a watcher species, ancient as the sea itself, silent like something larger than us choosing not to move, matching old Lusca warnings of shorebound sentinels appearing before storms. If it was watching the land, what was it waiting for from us? Before sunrise in the North Sea 2021, a ship's internal deck camera recorded this as a containment team lifted the body while the first mate watched. A scaled torso lay motionless, caught on camera, hands pressed down, filmed under white lights. No one spoke a word. The apparent human facial structure combined with a fully developed caudal fin could be a deep adapted hominin variant, with extreme bone density to withstand pressure, reduced lung volume, and a vascular system possibly optimized for oxygen storage. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a species evolved along abyssal shelves with bioluminescent communication and torpor states, gliding heavy as a whale but silent like a stealth sub. Aligning with Leviathan-era reports of sleeping sea women hauled aboard and never waking once removed from depth. If this one was sedated rather than dead, what protocols were activated after the camera stopped? At midday over a Pacific Reef 2020, an action camera recorded this as a recreational diver drifted backward in shock. Green eyes locked on, caught on camera, limbs extended, filmed mid-water, breathing turned erratic. The upright swimming posture and elongated extremities could indicate a highly intelligent deep-water organism capable of controlled buoyancy, with joint articulation adapted for three-dimensional movement, pressure-tolerant organs, and possibly derived from an ancient primate marine split. And if the structure is real, it might suggest bioluminescent signaling used for threat display, moving silent like a predator drone beneath coral. Recalling umabozu myths, where glowing-eyed figures approached lone swimmers before vanishing into blue silence. If it closed the distance once, how often has it watched divers without being noticed? At low tide on a remote shoreline 2019, a handheld phone recorded this as a bystander crouched close despite warnings. A swollen face blinked, caught on camera. Mud shifted, filmed inches away. The wind carried nothing. The thick subcutaneous fat and compressed neck structure could indicate a pressure-borne organism adapted to cold abyssal zones, with slow metabolism, dense connective tissue, and limited surface mobility. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a deep-sea scavenger lineage related to ancient cetaceans, gliding massive as a shipping container but helpless on land, echoing Kraken-era tales of sea giants that died silently when stranded by tides. If this was only one that failed to return, how many never surface at all? In late afternoon on an inland reservoir 2018, a zoom camera captured this as a fisherman froze mid-cast. A small figure perched, caught on camera. Water stayed still, filmed steady, no birds approached. The diminutive size and upright balance could suggest a juvenile stage of a larger aquatic species, with flexible bone structure, developing caudal musculature, and sensory organs tuned to vibration. And if the structure is real, it might imply inland migration routes through deep river systems, silent like something that doesn't belong there, mirroring Lusca folklore describing child-sized watchers appearing far from the sea. If juveniles reach inland waters, where do the adults remain hidden? At dawn on a storm-dark coast, 2022, A stabilized camera recorded this as waves dragged the body back and forth before a witness shouted. A tail snapped upward, caught on camera. Water splashed, filmed close. The body did not rise. The muscular caudal strike and thick dermal scales could indicate a powerful abyssal swimmer forced ashore by pressure shifts with reinforced vertebrae and limited tolerance for gravity. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a deep predator displaced by storms, heavy as a whale but sharp as a knife-edge shadow, aligning with Ningen accounts of pale forms washing up after seismic activity. If storms can force them out, what else is being pushed toward us? Beneath a coral overhang, 2023, a diver's upward-facing camera filmed this as bubbles stalled above the lens. A face hovered, caught on camera. Fins fluttered, filmed upside down. Light dimmed suddenly. The inverted posture and close-range observation could suggest curiosity-driven behavior from an intelligent deep-sea entity with skin adapted for reef camouflage, pressure-resistant eyes, and fine motor control in pectoral fins. And if the structure is real, it might indicate an ancient watcher species, silent like something larger choosing restraint, echoing old seafarer warnings of beings that observe but do not attack. If it chose not to move closer, what decision was it making in that moment? At midday beneath a coral overhang in the Red Sea, 2022, a diver's stabilized action camera recorded this as a marine biologist hovered just out of frame. A mass unfolded, caught on camera. Limbs coiled slowly, filmed in blue light. No one moved as it expanded. The hybrid anatomy could be a deep-sea cephalopod offshoot fused with a vertebrate framework, with distributed neural clusters, extreme pressure tolerance, and bioluminescent skin nodules possibly derived from abyssal squid. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient lineage where intelligence evolved along tentacular limbs rather than a single brain, gliding heavy as a whale, but silent like a stealth sub, recalling kraken myths that described human faces embedded in many armed bodies because early sailors could only process fragments of what they saw. If this form can remain still long enough to be filmed, how long had it been watching before the camera arrived? At sunset in the Bering Sea, 2021, a trawler's phone camera captured this as two fishermen shouted and backed away. A tail slammed wood, caught on camera. Water sprayed red gold, filmed shaking. No one laughed this time. The violent thrashing and muscular tail could indicate an apex deep-sea swimmer forced rapidly upward, with reinforced vertebrae, dense muscle fibers, and organs adapted to pressure gradients. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a predator displaced by thermal shifts, moving heavy as a shipping container but fast as a knife-edge shadow, aligning with Leviathan-era warnings that storms wake what sleeps below. If this one fought the surface, what happens when the next one doesn't? At dawn on a wooden pier, 2020, a handheld phone recorded this as a dock worker cradled the find in silence. Small eyes blinked, caught on camera. Gills fluttered once, filmed close. The water stayed calm. The infant proportions and underdeveloped tail could indicate an early growth stage of a much larger abyssal species, with soft bone density before pressure hardening, translucent skin for oxygen exchange, and neural development tuned to vibration. And if the structure is real, it might suggest deep-sea breeding grounds closer to shore than assumed, gliding later in life like a stealth sub, echoing Luska folklore of sea children, appearing briefly before vanishing forever. If this was only a juvenile, where are the adults hiding? At overcast midday in the North Atlantic, 2019, a deck camera recorded this as a crewman froze beside the rail. Seaweed clung tight, caught on camera. Eyes stayed open, film steady. The boat idled. The algae-covered skin and scaled limbs could suggest a long-dwelling surface-adapted variant of a deep species, using kelp camouflage, reduced metabolism, and dermal symbiosis to remain near fishing grounds. And if the structure is real, it might indicate prolonged observation behavior, silent like a predator drone holding position, matching umibozu tales of weed men seen before equipment failures. If it learned to hide in plain sight, how many times have we already passed it? At midnight during a fog bank, 2022, a flashlight-mounted camera filmed this as a deckhand stumbled backward. A pale face rose, caught on camera. Fingers spread wide, filmed shaking. Sound dropped away. The partial emergence and aggressive posture could be a stress response from a deep-pressure organism experiencing surface exposure, with dense bones, limited lung capacity, and heightened sensory overload. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an apex watcher species that avoids full surfacing, gliding below like a stealth sub waiting for darkness, recalling old Leviathan logs that describe screams followed by silence. If light repels them, what happens when the lights go out? At gray morning on an industrial vessel 2018, a fixed security camera recorded this as crew rushed to restrain the figure. A mouth opened wide, caught on camera. Water streamed off skin, filmed close. No alarm sounded. The upright movement and apparent strength could indicate a semi-terrestrial capability rarely seen, with reinforced joints, powerful musculature, and sensory systems tuned to vibration rather than sound. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient shoreline-adapted offshoot of abyssal predators, heavy as a whale but moving with deliberate intent, paralleling Ningen reports of humanoids walking briefly before returning to sea. If it could stand once, how long until one walks freely among us? At dawn in the North Atlantic 2018, a trawler's handheld deck camera recorded this as two fishermen wrestled the net while the captain shouted from behind. A human face strained, caught on camera. The mesh tightened, filmed shaking. No one believed the screams. The muscular upper torso fused to a scaled caudal body could be a deep-water hominin adapted to extreme pressure, with reinforced bone density, reduced buoyancy tissues, and hypertrophied muscles for vertical ascent. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient evolutionary branch that diverged before modern mammals fully claimed the surface, gliding heavy as a whale but moving like a stealth sub, dragged into daylight, echoing Leviathan-era logs describing netmen who fought like drowning sailors when pulled from the abyss. If nets can trap one by accident, what happens when one reaches up intentionally? At low tide on a foggy coast 2020, a stabilized phone camera recorded this as a lone witness backed away along wet sand. A massive form crawled forward, caught on camera. Water drained off armor, filmed close. The beach went silent. The immense scale and armored cranial ridges could indicate a deep ocean apex organism with extreme pressure tolerance, thick dermal plating, and slow metabolic control. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient guardian species, possibly derived from abyssal predators, big as a shipping container, but moving like a predator drone under ice, matching Kraken folklore that spoke of colossal shore breakers appearing briefly before retreating to depth. If this one reached the sand, how far inland could the next one go? At overcast morning on a wave-battered outcrop, 2019, a fixed-action camera recorded this as a climber steadied their breath. A green-haired figure leaned forward, caught on camera. Ribs flared once, filmed steady. The surf did not move. The exposed rib structures and elongated torso could indicate a pressure-borne organism capable of brief surface respiration, with reinforced cartilage, dense musculature, and skin adapted to cold abrasion. And if the structure is real, it might suggest a watcher behavior, resting at the boundary between worlds, silent like a knife-edge shadow, paralleling Ningen accounts of humanoids perched motionless near waterlines. If it wasn't stranded, what signal was it waiting for? At night in the North Pacific 2021, a vessel's security camera recorded this as three crew members stood frozen under floodlights. A pale body lay still, caught on camera. Water pooled beneath fins, filmed close. No orders were given. The smooth skin, reduced facial features, and full caudal fin could indicate a deep-pressure species with minimized surface anatomy, heavy bone density, and torpor capabilities. And if the structure is real, it might suggest an ancient lineage adapted to abyssal silence, gliding heavy as a whale but lifeless in air, recalling Leviathan-era warnings that sea bodies die when the sky touches them. If this one never woke, how many others surface only once? At gray afternoon in the Barents Sea, 2017, a handheld phone recorded this as deckhands stepped back in visible fear. A blue-scaled tail twitched, caught on camera. The head rolled once, filmed shaking. No one approached. The coloration and scale pattern could suggest bioluminescent adaptation lost under daylight stress, with pressure-hardened vertebrae and limited surface survival. And if the structure is real, it might indicate a species forced upward by sonar or seismic disturbance, moving silent like a submerged machine, echoing Umibozu myths where blue-bodied beings appeared before ships vanished. If this was forced up, what drove it out of the deep? At midday in the Sea of Japan 2016, a dockside camera recorded this as fishermen in yellow slickers refused to touch the body. A skeletal form rested, caught on camera. Fins lay rigid, filmed still. The harbor stayed quiet. The desiccated musculature and elongated spine could indicate a long-dead abyssal organism preserved by cold pressure before surfacing, with non-human skeletal ratios and remnants of a caudal structure suggesting aquatic dominance. And if the structure is real, it might point to ancient origins predating recorded history, silent as something never meant to be seen, recalling early sea monster illustrations drawn from similar dredged remains. If this is what reaches the surface dead, what still moves beneath us alive? Across the cold decks, silent reefs, and shadowed shorelines, one truth keeps surfacing again and again. The ocean is not finished revealing itself to us. What we call myths may simply be memories, fragments of encounters misunderstood, buried, or ignored because they did not fit our understanding of the world. These mysterious mermaid-like forms, whether living, dying, or watching from below, remind us how small we are in a planet still ruled by depth, pressure, and darkness. The sea does not speak loudly. It whispers through broken footage, trembling hands, and moments when witnesses fall silent. And silence, perhaps, is the most terrifying evidence of all. Because silence suggests awareness. It suggests something ancient, intelligent, and patient, something that does not need to be seen often to exist. Whether these beings are undiscovered species, misidentified life forms, or echoes of something far older, the question remains unanswered for a reason. The deep keeps its secrets until it chooses otherwise. If these mysteries made you question what you believe, if they made you feel watched, curious, or uneasy, then you're not alone. Like if you felt it, comment what you think is really out there. Subscribe to Mystery Footage Uncovered, because the ocean hasn't finished telling its story.